What if I told you that almost everything you were taught about ancient humans is either outdated, exaggerated, or flat out wrong? For most of us, the past was handed to us like a neat little book. Cavemen were dumb. Egyptians worshipped cats all day. Romans were unstoppable geniuses. Vikings were filthy brutes, and medieval people thought the earth was flat. But the truth buried in ancient ruins, DNA, and modern archaeology, it paints a very different story, one that doesn't just challenge your expectations, it smashes them. Stick with me, because by the end of this video you might never look at history class the same way again. Before we dive in, quick favor, tap the like button and subscribe if you love uncovering hidden truths from the ancient world. And tell me in the comments, what's the biggest historical myth you grew up believing? Let us start with one of the oldest and most damaging myths, that ancient people were unintelligent or primitive. The phrase Stone Age has been used as an insult for decades, as if using stone tools means humans were barely functioning. But modern research proves otherwise. These so-called primitive societies built boats, performed surgeries, created artwork, tracked lunar cycles, and developed trade networks spanning thousands of miles, all before writing even existed. One discovery in Turkey at Göbekli Tepe stunned archaeologists. It's a 12,000-year-old temple complex built with massive stone pillars, weighing up to 20 tons each. That's older than the pyramids and Stonehenge, yet it was constructed before humans even settled into farming villages. According to the old timeline, this shouldn't exist. But it does, and it shows one thing clearly. Our ancestors were innovating long before textbooks give them credit. And speaking of pyramids, let us murder another myth right now, the idea that they were built by slaves dragged in chains under the whip. Hollywood loves that image, but archaeology doesn't. Excavations at Giza have uncovered worker villages, bakeries, medical facilities, and burial sites with honors given to builders. These were not slaves. They were skilled laborers who were housed, fed, and respected. Some were even given beef, which was considered luxury food. So no, the pyramids were not the result of misery and chains. They were national projects of pride and engineering brilliance. Let's keep going, because this next one might sting. You are probably told that Vikings were filthy, wild, unwashed savages with axes in their teeth. Except that Scandinavian graves tell a different story. Archaeologists found grooming kits with combs, razors, tweezers, and even ear cleaners. In fact, Vikings bathed at least once a week more often than most Europeans at the time. They also wore eyeliner, not for fashion, but to reduce bright sunlight and protect their eyes, just like modern athletes use black stripes. So instead of dirty barbarians, picture stylish warriors with better hygiene than half their enemies. Here's a myth teachers love. Medieval Europeans believed the earth was flat. It makes the past sound ridiculous, and modern people look smarter. But in reality, educated people as far back as ancient Greece knew the earth was round. Even medieval scholars and church writings acknowledged it. Sailors used curved horizon logic to navigate, and mathematicians calculated Earth's size centuries before Columbus. The flat Earth myth didn't become popular until the 1800s, when writers invented it to make the Middle Ages look ignorant. So no, your ancestors weren't walking around terrified of falling off the edge of the world. Now let's tackle one of the most misunderstood civilizations, the Mayans. Thanks to memes and fake documentaries, tons of people still believe the Mayans predicted the world would end in 2012. But what actually happened? Their long count calendar simply reset, like flipping from December 31 to January 1. There are no apocalypse carvings, no doomsday predictions, just a cultural cycle. It would be like someone in the future thinking the world ended in the year 2000 because your calendar restarted. The real Mayans were mathematicians, astronomers, and architects, not fortune-tellers writing disaster clickbait. Here's another lie that got stuck in school lessons: the Romans murdered gladiators every time they fought. Sure, some battles were lethal, but most gladiators were expensive, trained professionals. Owners invested in their fighters the way modern sports teams invest in star athletes. Many matches ended with surrender or non-lethal outcomes. Helmets, armor, and referees existed to regulate combat. Death matches happened, but not nearly at the rate TV shows want you to believe. Now let's talk about ancient health and science. People assume ancient medicine was nothing but herbs, superstition, and accidental luck. But Egyptian medical papyri describe bone setting, stitches, prosthetics, childbirth techniques, and even dental surgery. In ancient India, the physician Sushruta performed nose reconstructions centuries before modern plastic surgery. Chinese medicine tracked pulse variations long before Western doctors did. Even Neanderthals used plants with anti-inflammatory and pain-relieving properties. The idea that our ancestors knew nothing about healing is not just wrong, it's lazy. How about this one? That ancient people were short, weak, and barely lived past 30. Actually, the average lifespan was dragged down by high infant mortality. If you survived childhood, you had a real chance of living into your 60s or 70s. Bones and clothing also show many ancient populations were similar in height to modern humans. Some Roman skeletons measured over 178 centimeters, 5'10", and muscle attachment marks show they were often stronger than the average gym-goer today. One of the worst myths is that ancient civilizations were isolated: Egypt in Egypt, China in China, Greece in Greece. In reality, trade networks connected continents long before modern borders existed. Egyptian mummies contained nicotine and cocaine traces, plants native only to the Americas. Mediterranean pottery has been found in the UK and Scandinavia. Bronze Age shipwrecks carried cargo from as far as Afghanistan, Cyprus, and Crete to Turkey. People traveled, traded, migrated, and influenced each other constantly. And let's not forget how often history erased certain people. Women in the ancient world are often portrayed as powerless and silent. But dig sites and inscriptions tell another story. Egyptian women owned property, divorced husbands, and ran businesses. Viking women traveled, fought, and ruled households. In Sparta, women were educated and owned land. In Mesopotamia, priestesses held powerful political influence. The myth of men built everything, women stayed home, is more Victorian than ancient. Now here's something that flips the script completely. Ancient people weren't always superstitious or irrational. They used observation, experimentation, and adaptation all the time. The Babylonians tracked planetary movements with math that rivals early modern astronomy. The Antikythera mechanism from ancient Greece functioned as a mechanical computer. The Indus Valley civilization built cities with plumbing that some modern towns would envy. Even the label savage comes apart when you look closely. The Celts created intricate metalwork and maintained complex legal systems. The Aztecs built one of the largest cities in the world, Tenochtitlan, with floating agricultural systems that rival modern hydroponics. Native Australians used controlled burns to shape ecosystems sustainably for tens of thousands of years. So why were we taught such simplistic versions of these people? Partly because early historians filtered everything through their own bias. Some wanted to glorify their own cultures by mocking others. Some wanted to justify colonization by painting earlier societies as barbaric. And some myths just stuck because they made catchy stories. But modern science is ripping those stories open. DNA testing, satellite scanning, carbon dating, LiDAR imaging, and underwater excavations are rewriting chapters that were thought to be closed. Cities lost in jungles are being mapped from the sky. Mass graves are revealing unknown battles. Old bones are telling us who was there, what they ate, and where they traveled. And here's just the craziest part. Some of the myths we believed are only a few decades old. They're not ancient lies, they're modern inventions that hardened into truth because they were repeated often enough. So what if everything you learned about ancient people was wrong? Not everything, but enough that you should question it, enough that you should stay curious, enough that you should dig deeper literally and historically, because behind every myth is either a misunderstanding, a lie, or a truth distorted by time. If you want more stories that punch holes in old history and uncover what really happened, hit subscribe. And let me know in the comments which myth surprised you the most today. The past isn't what you were told. It's bigger, smarter, stranger, and way more human.